not easy. Uh, Being a regulatory person and background, having regulatory background, it's not easy. When you really have to frame the regulation which can work for everyone, from society to industry to farmers, it's not easy. So there have been substantial progress, I would say, in many areas. I think there are areas that where we could do more. Would be one is predictability. It's very important in any system to bring predictability. And therefore, I think we could do more. How do we make our regulatory framework more predictable? Point came before is using technology. We are using, how can we use it better? The other one is transparency. How do we make our regulatory framework more transparent? How do we be more participative, collaborative with all the stakeholders when we are developing the regulation, when we are framing the regulation? The third would be how do we bring more quality in our regulatory framework, which means how do we infuse science? How do we ensure that our regulatory framework is up to date with the science, not nationally but internationally as well, but relevant to the country? The other is timeliness, which brings to predictability as well, so that all the stakeholders, including industry, understands and can predict that what is coming, when it is coming, when it is going to be implemented, not like Maharashtra plastic ban, which came out of the blue in 30 days, you have to comply. Some sort of collaboration and having a timeliness that would help. And the other one is innovation. Regulatory framework, if it doesn't have flexibility for innovation, it will not help industry to bring innovation and therefore the consumers and the society as well. More so in India, if I look at, and the other one before I forget is harmonization. I understand that international regulation or other countries' regulations are applicable to other countries, but however, in the globalized world, it is important that how do we not reinvent the wheel and how do we learn from each other and how do we bring the regulation in such a manner which is helping the companies to take their products globally. For example, India has been whiskey country. Now we are growing the taste of wine, and Spain is been wine country forever. Is there a possibility that we grow tastes of Indian wine in Spain? It can only be possible when regulations are harmonized. Same way olives, now we have growing taste of olives in the country, and therefore can we look at those regulations which can help each other to remove the bottleneck. The last one I think is quite important is state versus center. There are regulations built or framed at the center level, but implemented at the state level. Therefore, the implementation of the regulation and the interference within that doesn't really help when you have national companies doing business across the country, and when the same regulation is interpreted differently and implemented differently, it doesn't really help the businesses. So therefore, having some sort of alignment, state versus center, would help. And we have seen a lot of progress in last, I would say, in last 24 months or so. There's a lot more collaboration between state authority and the center authority.
All right. Siraj, any thoughts, or Teresa, from your point of view?
I fully agree with all the views that were presented today, but perhaps there's a need to work together to have an optimization of the implementation and control of the compliance, because innovators and the best users of the best practices and technologies are competing with those that perhaps are not 100% in compliance. Yeah. So markets suffer when a part of the market is not 100% compliant. So trying to optimize this, everybody in 100% of good regulation is perfect.
Wonderful. Siraj? Continuing from what Teresa just said, I think one of the challenges or the challenge with regulation is that at the end of the day, there's 10% of the food processing industry which actually gets covered in that. And exactly what you said, that till we get a larger part of the industry in it, then the whole cost and the relative competitiveness gets affected. But you cannot stop that process, you cannot doubt that process, it will take time, but that's the way forward, and we will have to bear the pain of a larger percentage of industry coming under that regulation, which for the size and the spread of the industry, it's probably not easy. So every regulation that comes in, ultimately it's the large companies or the few big companies that bear the brunt of that change, and not that change is bad, it's just that there's a lot happening. So there is certainly, it's great to see FSSAI as it is today. One, they are trying to make life easy, but at the same time, they're not losing sight of what is good for the consumer. And so a lot of initiatives that they're taking. As an operator, as a company, I think where we have it, what it does is that it keeps us on our toes, and sometimes that much love and affection from them can actually be a little overwhelming, but you cannot doubt the intent, and therefore one has to support it, because in the long run, that's great for the country. The challenge I see is alignment between different arms of the government into what the food processing industry brings to the table. So the good news is that in the last few years, we've seen a lot of emphasis on support for the food processing industry, whether it's from the government at the agriculture side or the Ministry for Food Processing Industry has been very forthcoming in supporting the industry. And then there have been the improvement in the whole operations of the FSSAI, which has become a lot more facilitative and supportive of the industry. But on the other hand, we have elements of what I would call so these are all coming from a perspective, the first half is coming from a perspective that food processing industry is essential for the farmer in this country to get a higher remuneration for the effort that he's making. There is another side, which is where you get into your GST and your health sector, or health regulations, which sees food processing or processed food as not good for health, and a food for and a consumption of the rich, which then is leading to a lot more regulations on and permissions and lack of permissions or banning of reduction in consumption of processed food and higher taxation. So we need to find this balance where if we want food processing industry to flourish, because that helps the farmer to convert his produce into food, we need to understand that where is the processed food consumption affecting us and how it should be priced for more people to consume it. I think in our effort to be upfront on the health side, we have obviously tried to copy a lot of the Western standards for health, not giving credence to what an Indian consumer's diet is and how much of these things are affecting him. My concern is that if we go overboard with these regulations, we are somewhere converting our concern for food into food scare, and that may not necessarily be very good for the population.
And just to take that thought forward, these days I'm hearing the terminology of clean label. Clean label implies naturally extracted preservatives or naturally extracted ingredients going into different ingredient products. Taking that point further, I wanted to ask Saket, you as well as Girish, you can follow. What GST bracket do you fall in, and what were the implications with that?
Well, on the GST side, I think we received it very, very well, and so did the industry, the food processing industry from our perspective, because before GST, we were in any case under excise, so we were a send-wettable unit. And when we were selling cans to the food processing industry, we were charging 12.5% excise plus 2% CST, which is, say, about 15%, which was a cost to the industry. After GST, I put 18% GST, which is not a cost to the industry, so they get a credit. So without doing much, my can is cheaper by 15% for the industry. So for me, it's a welcome move, and I believe it's definitely helping the other thing which we saw, that a lot of unorganized segment, because now there is no tax to be saved in the chain. So the people who were really using or buying cans or selling processed food, filled products, really without declaring them to the government, now for them there's nothing to really save by saving on tax. So that segment is also coming to the organized side. So end of the day, the scale would be the name of the game now. I mean, it's not the smaller scale unit with the excise exemption can compete with you. It's a level playing field. So I think we are very happy with the GST. Yeah.
Girish, quick thoughts? Sagar, in case of plant and machinery for food processing, it's a negative impact. Unfortunately, I would have to say this. Reason being one, there has been a discrepancy when the different machineries have been taxed in different tax brackets. My company makes machinery for dairy and food. Now, considering I'm supplying the same set of machinery to dairy, I charge them at 12%. But if the same plant, exactly the same, I say it is for juice, I have to charge them 18%. So why this change? Is fruit processing not as important as dairy processing? That's one question. Second most important is that we are talking about these subsidies for new processing industries, which under the Kisan Sampada, on a 15 crore investment, there is a 35 or 50% subsidy. But there is an underlined statement saying the subsidy is not on the tax, which is quite obvious. But if I take you through the figures, suppose the entrepreneur A is setting up an industry for 15 crores, out of which he spent 10 crores on plant machinery, on which he pays 18%. That means he's paid almost about 2 crores, 3.6 crores on 1.8 crores just for the tax component, which A, he does not get subsidized, the bank does not give him this money. B, if we go by the GST claim back, he has to make turnover of 20 crores before he can actually eventually take it back. Now, if you compare this to a SME, a new entrepreneur who's just set up a unit, who doesn't have a brand, he's struggling, that's a lot of money that is going out of his pocket, which neither the bank compensates. The bank says, we give you only the basic amount funding. Tax is yours. So that means if I have to, as an entrepreneur, invest 25%, that is 25 plus 1.8 crores. So that means my investment is 3.5. I mean,
Size was always there.
no, but not in the food business.
I guess we'll have to address that, and we'll have to take the issue with the ministry also. This is my last question because we have a paucity of time, and then we will open for a quick audience question. See, in food processing, we keep on seeing that the regulations are primarily on the industry side, all right? But when it comes to farmer, all right, there are absolutely no regulations. So industry has to deal with a situation where they have to produce a quality produce, and the kind of sometimes the adulteration or kind of the mixing that or kind of issues that happen on the quality of produce at farm level becomes a serious concern, right? So this is a quick question for the entire panel, starting with Teresa. Teresa, in Spain, are farmers taxed is one, and secondly, are regulations applicable on them for any issues? And then let's start with that thought.
Yeah, indeed. Indirect taxation covers from farm to fork.
Okay.
That is, the indirect taxation goes
All
to
across,
the
all
end
across
consumer,
sector, all across.
starting
And-
at the first.
And are the regulations of the country applicable on farmers also? For example, if I do an adulteration of a commodity and it comes into are there implications on farm level?
Absolutely.
All right.
Direct taxation also applies for
Any
farmers.
thoughts from this entire panel on this?
So I just wanted to add, I think on the first one, of course, European legislation enforced in all member states, and therefore is quite strict when it comes to even farmers for milk production or any meat production or any other farming sector. In India, we support more than 100,000 farmers. We source milk. For example, 80% our spend goes in agriculture raw material. So therefore, the scale that we deal with the farmers, whether for milk or grains or for anything, is quite huge. As you rightly said, one of the challenge is to ensure quality of the raw material that we get, whether it's a milk or grains or sugar or anything that we get. it's a challenge. And therefore, of course, through number of years, we have built the ecosystem and we have built a framework under which we operate and we ensure quality of the incoming raw material. But of course, it will help if there is certain framework from farm produce point of view that will help the industry to ensure the quality and consistency as well. Agree. Agree. Exactly. Agree. Rightly said, sir. It's just the compliance. Is that we have to double check.
We will,
that
we will,
you're right.
Radhakrishnan, we will take the questions, but any, I want to complete on the panel discussion side. Any other thoughts on the farm level? Well, gentlemen, I have a lot more questions to ask, but I think we will have to take that offline. And I would love to have a detailed discussion individually with each of you and get your knowledgeable thoughts on the sector. Considering the paucity of time, I'm going to close this panel discussion at this stage. Sincerely thank you for everybody sharing their extremely valuable thoughts on varied of issues. And I'm going to open this panel for questions, subjective to whom I choose, and one question per person. All right, starting with probably just three.
There's a
two or
lady
three.
there, lady.
Well, let's, yeah, absolutely. So please.
I was handling this food processing before the ministry in 80s. 4 decades ago, we were planning to have small plants near the farms so that this glut of production of perishable products like tomato could be utilized, and we had less of storage problems, we had more economic benefits because the things were processed right there where there was production. So now I would like to know, maybe it's my ignorance, what happened to those plants? Are there any plants set up near the farms so that the glut which we see today, farmers throwing it on the street, or just the cash value of 4 rupees per kg for tomatoes, has something happened to that? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that question. I mean, I belong to the metal can industry, as I explained. So there's a lot of small canning units already set up closer to the farm level. Mango pulp industry has grown over the years because of small canning units. I mean, in Chittoor, Krishnagiri, there are 120 plus canning units alone. Just next to the farm level, where people, whatever crop they get, they immediately can. And with the benefit of can is that you don't need refrigeration. You can store at 2 years, add ambient temperature, distribute throughout the globe. So that benefit is being reaped, but there is more investment needed. I agree, it's not enough, what you are saying. The picture which we saw in the morning of tomatoes being put onto the roads, if someone would have just canned it rather than storing it, it would have been there for 2 years with the same nutrient value of the produce. I mean, you heat the product and you vacuumize it and you can it, and then you can just export it anywhere in the world. So in the Horeca, in the yeah. Okay. Okay. So it is definite.
I would like not an open-ended, but I would like.
No, it is practical because Indian mango pulp export is huge in cans. So, okay, okay, I can respond to that. Today, fruity, you have throughout the year. Sir, Fruity is an Indian company, Parle Agro. Let. Can you please?
Kapoor Saab, I know your Kapoor Saab, I understand. So I guess the challenge, Kapoor Saab, I understand. I guess the challenge happens is the farmer for whom ideally farm level infrastructure is ideal has a paucity of funds, and therefore the entrepreneurs who therefore see an opportunity on it have to play a role, and there are contract farmings opportunity that typically have to happen. But I would love this discussion to be taken offline. Next question, please, from the audience. Yes, please. Can you get the mic, please, quickly?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhinav Kumar, and I'm from an organization called
Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Abhinav Kumar. I'm from Techs, and I've heard a lot of discussion today around technology, food technology, a lot of other things in terms of compliance, a lot of things in terms of agriculture. My question is slightly different, and we talked about disruption also while Girish talked about it, right? So how are companies, mature organizations like Cargill or GSK or Venky, right? How are you actually adopting emerging technologies, right? In terms of artificial intelligence or Internet of Things, right? How are you taking it to the next level? Have you even thought of implementing IR 4.0 or Industrial Revolution 4.0 to actually build in efficiencies within your organization, reduce food wastage? I would like to hear your opinion on that.
So technology equals efficiency. How has that been incorporated into companies? Leaving thoughts?
So I think that's a very good point again. If I look at technology has revolutionized many industries, and including our food industry, and more so for GSK, I could speak to. One, of course, is quite open, and we have adopted many newer technologies, and we are continuously looking at like artificial intelligence and many other technologies to look at it as well. We have implemented, so for example, one of our manufacturing site in India is manless, is completely automated and runs on the technology, and therefore you bring better predictability and quality, and you have better control on the products as well. So yes, but hand on heart, being honest, I think there are many other industries, they have gone far ahead adopting the technologies than food industry, I would say, and more so in India as well.
Girish, close correlation with technology, or?
Not to the extent that what he's trying to, that's more to do with the consumers.
All right, wonderful. Sir, I'll just take one and then I'll come to you. Sir, and that'll be my last question.
I just wanted to say, ma'am, your passion for the topic is inspirational.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to put it on the table. Thank you.
And let me tell you, you're standing tall in the industry, so thank you so much.
Yeah, Dr. Teresa, here. What is the regulation for your chemical preservation, food processing and dairy products? In India, people take liberty, and now it has become a carcinogenic problem. It's a huge problem in India. People violate a lot. Preservatives for food processing and chemical putting. Do you have some regulation?
We have the regulation that on this subject applies for all the European Union. That is, all the 28 member states have to be in compliance with the European Union framework. That's for all. And in permanent adaptation in terms of chemicals, trying to include more and more the physical treatment, the hydration, hot conditions, cold storage as an alternative to, let's say, 20th century chemicals that were typical a couple of decades ago, but no more being used now.
So actually, I like to just take that thought forward and just share how the perception is. So consider, preservation is considered to be a negative word, right? But
No.
it perceived to be a negative word. But having said that, if you see the most common preservative, the citric acid and everything, it's an extract out of citrus products, right? It's a natural extract, and that is seen as a negative, which actually it may not be. So as far as Spain is concerned, to make the story short, I think they have the Spanish regulations, then they have the EU regulations, and then the Codex regulations are also applicable. So 3 different levels of regulations are applicable on them. I'll take this last question, sir. Yeah, sir.
My question is, where are the rules and regulations?
In where, sir?
Where are the rules and regulations? BT brinjal is banned in India, freely imported from Bangladesh. GMO is banned in India, all soybean from USA is GMO. I'm just asking you, very low credibility for Indian labs. The grapes are exported from Maharashtra, They are dumped in Rotterdam because of high pesticide. Somebody is infected pesticide between the travel. I just want to know, there are no rules and regulations. Please answer my question. I am H.S. Sharma, IIT Bombay graduate first batch, member, National Task Force on Perishable Agriculture Commodity, trained across the world. I am 80-year-old. Whole world I was trained. This technology confined to Maharashtra. It has not spread to India. We have high ambient temperature, 54 degree last year in Rajasthan. High relative humidity, no cold chain, 20% peak power shortage. Put all 4 factors. 100 kg fruit vegetable we grow, 80 kg goes to waste. Kindly handle this. Thank you.
Can I answer that question? So, sir, very pertinent question from your side. So obviously in India, we have a Food Safety and Standard Authority. Unfortunately for us, till a few years back, we had a multitude of regulations to deal with, and then we had to deal, and then there were kind of an inspector Raj across through the multitude of institutions coming. Thankfully, that has all got consolidated. Now, as far as pesticide, insecticide is concerned, this again comes to our issue pertaining to farm level also. The kind of knowledge or interaction with the industry when it comes to the extent of pesticide usage or the insecticide usage. Typically, a farmer has an attitude, let's put, if he has been told put 1/4 of a bottle, he will try to put the entire bottle just to make safe in terms of the crop. So I totally agree with you. We have issues, post Green Revolution. Even a mother's milk in India today has pesticide residue. It is part of our ecosystem today. And as unfortunate as that is, considering the health, wellness, and the green initiatives that are taking place across the country, we hope that this scenario changes in a few years' time. And I sincerely appreciate this. I'm sure there are a lot many questions to ask, but I will have to close the panel discussion here. And gentlemen, thank you so much for everybody, and thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And lady, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. If I can just ask the audience for 2 minutes of their time, please. Then we can go out for lunch.
Indeed, we have a contact, Spanish contact.
Well, we are thanking all our very wonderful and talented panelists. I request Mr. Sagar Kurade to give over all the amazing mementos to all our panelists over here. Thank you so much.
Starting with, in the sequence.
The very first, Mr. Siraj Azmat Chaudhry, Chairman, Cargill India Private Limited. A huge round of applause for Mr. Siraj Azmat Chaudhry. Thank you so much for your very wonderful and productive time, sir. For his wonderful thoughts, let's put hands together. Thank you so much, sir, for your very, very quality presence. Next, we do have Mr. Arun Mishra, Executive VP and Head Regulatory Affairs, GSK. A huge round of applause for Mr. Arun Mishra. Thank you so much for your valuable thoughts and time. Mr. Uday Sawant, General Manager, Venky's India Limited. A huge round of applause for this gentleman as well. Following him, we have Mr. Saket, Bhatia, Senior Vice President Marketing, Hindustan Tin Works. A huge round of applause for Mr. Saket Bhatia. Also, the very pretty lady in white, Dr. Teresa, Food and Environment Embassy of Spain. A huge round of applause for this very, very talented personality. Thank you so much. Mr. Akshay Bector, MD, Cremica Foods. And the last but not the least for sure, Mr. Girish Bajaj, Managing Director, Bajaj Process Pack Limited. A huge round of applause for all the panelists over here. It was a beautiful and a very productive exchange of thoughts and conversations, we all suppose.
The chairperson has to be also given, no?
Well, I request Dr. Kanta to kindly come and join me over here on this stage. It's time to hand over, it's time to give the memento to none other than Mr. Sagar Kurade. Put your hands together for this very, very amazing and beautiful moment.
Be careful.
Once again, big thanks to all the panelists, to our very wonderful moderator. I request everybody to please be seated. Back to all of your respective seats.
Please join us for lunch.
So that was all with the panel discussion on processed food industry, ecosystem and opportunities. So ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a quick and a very short break. A short break for lunch, all of you. Thank you so much for your valuable time. We're looking forward to meet all of you all together in some time. We would be beginning the very next panel discussion on organized retail, challenges and opportunities very shortly. Thank you.